We are here. Let's share out the link. Otherwise, people won't know how to get here. Share. Boom. Boom. Tweet it out. Michigan looks very bad. Michigan looks very bad in my opinion. What does that mean? 35 Robert 16. Are you talking basketball? Talking football? There's lots of ways I can take that, you know? I love the idea of you, Robert. You just walk in. Michigan looks bad. Oh, I see your tweet now. How does Michigan, I got it, makes Michigan look bad? I'll talk about that. I can get that. You know what? I can understand why someone may think that. So I'll add that to the list of things to say. So I'll put here in questions. Does Michigan look like a side piece? Right? That's the concern. We'll give a minute. Hopefully some people flow in here. All right. Like, you may not want to be here, but it's his only option. I can get that, right? Like, I think that is a consideration. That's a consideration. Right? Those are some key aspects that I think you gotta consider. And yeah, how much does it matter, right? How much does, if Michigan is a consolation prize, how much does that really matter for Michigan in terms of, like you said, winning on the field? So I kind of want to put the overall timeline. I'm just going to start typing that out as people join here. Timeline. I apologize for the noisy keyboard, but you're going to have to put up with it. So main thing here, and we got to go all the way back, right? 2020 sucks. Contract cut in half, right? Reshape roster with some young guys, right? Pretty big changes were made, at least on the defensive side, obviously. 2021 happens, right? Probably due for contract renegotiation. Raiders open up, right? That seemed like a likely, or not likely, I shouldn't be using that verbiage. That seemed like a sensical option. Buddies with the owner. has experience being in Las Vegas. Met his wife there, I think. Then I'll put here, go in different direction. Right? But there was some like early potential interest there. Couple additional jobs open up. So you had, right, like Miami with Stephen Ross saying, I'm not going to tear him away from Michigan. Chicago, didn't really seem like there was much going on there. Jacksonville, no real connection. And then it's like, by this point, Michigan puts a contract together, right? Restructuring the contract. Harbaugh doesn't sign it. Vikings hire, how do you spell this guy's name? Adolfo Mensa, right? Goes way back with Harbaugh. Good friends with Matt Weiss, the QB coach for Michigan. So there's a lot of things stacking up here, right? And then initial interview goes well, right? In-person interview scheduled. Report that Harbaugh expected to take job, right? All day interview Wednesday. Harbaugh notifies Michigan he returns, right? So that's essentially it. This is your end-to-end timeline of what actually happened here. And essentially it came down to what Harbaugh thought this in-person interview meant versus what it meant to the Vikings, right? He had Adolfo Mensa in his corner, but there were additional members of the organization to convince as a part of this in-person interview, right? And it's possible that Harbaugh and people in Harbaugh's camp were expecting this to be, yep, he's going, he's gone. And it very well may have been the case if he was offered the job. And maybe Harbaugh thought that this in-person aspect was more of a formality than it actually was, right? That could be the case. But essentially wasn't given the job. Notifies Michigan he's returning, right? If you don't have an offer, that's not going to be in your future. I want to pull up a couple tweets here because I think it's important to go into some of these as well. I'll pull up a couple of these. So Courtney Cronin is kind of the one who had some of the info on some of her sources. Courtney Cronin is Minnesota Vikings reporter for ESPN, right? So pretty reliable here. I mentioned the Adolfo Mensa connection. Harbaugh operated under the assumption that the job was his and prepared for the interview as such. So this is where you can start to see why certain people were extremely confident reporting that he was going to the Vikings, right? If all from the Michigan camp is he is expected to take this job and this is a formality, then yeah, it's looking pretty realistic. The issue is that's a skewed perception, right? It might have been a mix-up from Harbaugh to go into that with that assumption, right? And as Courtney says here, Vikings saw this very differently, not slam dunk, no offer extended, and isn't necessarily a matter of who said no to who. Two sides did not align on this, right? Two sides did not align on the nature of what the in-person meeting was all about, right? So it's very likely that Harbaugh could have been expecting that offer as a part of this interview, and it was more a formality than it wasn't, right? And that could be the case. The other thing to bring up here, take this off screen. I want to make sure I pull it up. Right here. Jim Harbaugh told Ward Manuel that this would not be a recurring issue. He would stay at Michigan as long as it wants him, per sources. So that's Adam Schefter. So that's an interesting thing I want to break down. So I'm going to put Adam Schefter here. And I'm putting quotes here. Ward Harbaugh tells Manuel this would not be a reoccurring, I can't spell tonight, issue, and would stay at Michigan as long as it wants him. Right? So how true is this? How much can you really read into that? And I'll add this, Jake, with this question here. Not sure if you have any intel. What kind of contract extension would you expect? So I'll add that below as well. I first want to address this, Adam Schefter. Harbaugh tells Manuel this would not be a reoccurring issue. Would stay in Michigan as long as it wants him. So I don't know how much I believe this, right? Because Harbaugh did lose all leverage. Or I should say, not all leverage, but Harbaugh did make Michigan look fragile a little bit here, right? All things are pointed to Harbaugh leaving. It looked that way. It did. A lot of people were saying it, right? Some people more convincingly than others, and maybe jumped the gun a bit, obviously. But Harbaugh did make Michigan look fragile. I do believe that is more because of NFL timelines than anything else, right? What I mean by that, their jobs are opening up now. It wasn't like Harbaugh was waffling around like, oh, maybe I don't want to. Like he was pretty quick with this process of looking at schools. He was pretty upfront about it, of saying I'm entertaining this, right? It wasn't like, oh no, I'm totally committed to this program, and then just ducks out, right? He said I'm going to pursue this and I'm going to interview. So he was pretty upfront with it. And it did make it seem if he got an offer, he would be gone, right? I think that's fair. So him telling Manuel that this would not be a reoccurring issue, that almost needs to be said, right? Because you can't have this year in, year out, right? If there is a year that Harbaugh can get away with that, it is this year, right? It is this year because he, one of the best, turnarounds in the country, brought the program a championship. You get to the playoff, get the monkey off your back, beating OSU. You got a lot of leverage doing that, right? And you can cash in those chips. Harbaugh cash in those chips to take a shot at the NFL, right? And if it's Harbaugh after 2020 and he's doing this, I don't think he has those chips to cash, right? You say, hey, I'm going to check out the NFL, wait for me, right? And kind of string Michigan along. That doesn't fly. We brought him a championship, right? It's late in the cycle here. Michigan doesn't have a whole lot of options otherwise, right? So Harbaugh does have a lot of leverage in this search. So do I actually believe that he would be staying, as long as Michigan wants him? A part of me does think that Harbaugh also thought this was the best chance to get back to the NFL, right? I do think there's a part of him who wants to compete again at that level, right? I don't think that's crazy to expect a hyper-competitive guy to want to go back to the NFL. I think that's reasonable. And him winning the Super Bowl, I feel like he probably felt like he got done a big part of what he promised himself he would bring to this school before looking elsewhere with a different endeavor. I think he thought that after this year, he brought a championship, brought a win over Ohio State, right? And that he had done enough to bring Michigan back before pursuing other goals. I think that's I can get behind that mindset and understand that, right? I don't even know what my point is here. So maybe with that, right? At the all-time high, right? AP Coach of the Year, you got all those, your tip top of where you have been. And if you're going to go back to the NFL, this is the year to get your best chance to enter the realm of the NFL. Your resume is going to be as attractive as it can be right now. Right now. And if he didn't get the offer, right, this is the year where you can go back to Michigan and, you know, you'll maybe catch some heat, which a lot of people are mad right now, which I don't understand. But this is the year to do that, right? And if you look at his age, he may be thinking, you know what, I just don't have a whole lot of years to make that jump back to the NFL. It's now or never, right? So that's the argument of believing that he would stay at Michigan as long as they want him, is if you subscribe to that fact where he's thinking, if I'm making this move, I need to make it once, and I'm cashing in those chips now to see if this is an option for me still, and those chips are gone and I can't get enough chips to do that again, right? Maybe that's the argument. So I don't know. He doesn't seem like a guy who outright lies, you know, based on how he handled this situation. He was pretty upfront with, again, the university. You have to let people know that you're recruiting, but he wasn't telling recruits that, like, oh, I'm not going anywhere. It was more of like, I think the most he said was like, don't worry, which isn't really definitive, you know? So I don't know, maybe I'm over defending him, but I feel like he was pretty upfront that, like, he was going to be pursuing this and see it through. And, you know, wasn't making any lofty promises that I saw to make people feel like he was, you know, just doing this to negotiate a better contract in Michigan, things like that. It seemed legit, right? So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I didn't really even give my opinion. I don't know. If gun to my head and I have to say, do I believe this or not? I feel like it's pretty bold to say that and not back that up. And I feel like he's a guy who would kind of get pissed if someone made this lofty of a statement and then went back on it, you know? And I don't know. He could be that guy. But this is a strong statement. And based on how he handled this situation and was relatively upfront, I feel like he just wouldn't say this unless he really thought it. Now again, I don't know. If I have to give like a percentage, right, I'm probably 70-30 that he's truthful here. Again, it's a really strong statement to not back it up. I don't know. Okay, let's get into some of these questions. So, does Michigan look like a side piece? I'm going to say absolutely they do. Right? Absolutely they do. Seemed like if he got an offer, he was going to go. So I think absolutely Michigan does. Seems like a consolation prize, right? I don't think it matters, right? And I think you do have to buy into this statement a little bit to go with the I don't think it matters, right? But, like, Michigan's roster is in a good spot, right? You haven't seen a giant exodus of transfers and things like that. You know, if he's signing a big-time deal, that should help solidify recruiting a little bit. It was at a time where most of the class was already signed. You have the roster in a good spot to where 2022 looks like you could build upon 2021 even, right? And you have a lot of promising pieces there. So I think, yeah, makes Michigan look a little bit more like a consolation prize. But again, I don't think it matters. I think everything is still operate as usual, and you're happy that he came back, right? And one thing I'm going to add here is I don't understand why people are mad. I don't understand it. If he was, and my point here is he wasn't interviewing for other college football jobs, right? Then you could be pissed off because it's like, what are you even doing, right? It's the same, and I had a tweet about it. It's the same logic that it's the same logic of losing a guy early to the NFL, right? You want to see your guys go to the NFL in general, and really you can't blame the guy for wanting a new challenge, right? Going on the next path. I know it's not the same because it's the clear path for a college player to get to the NFL. It's not necessarily the same path for a college football coach to the NFL. But if that's a guy's goal, it's different than a transfer. A transfer is a little bit worse, right? Because it's like, ooh, he just wasn't happy here, didn't want to be here and wanted to be somewhere else in the same league, right? In the same league. If Harbaugh's going to a different school, this isn't my tune at all. But going to a different league, right? Going to the professional league, it's just a different experience. It's not the same thing. And I can't blame a guy for wanting to see what another league has to offer. I don't think that's crazy. Are people not allowed to interview jobs? Right? It's like people feel that there's like some loyalty that Harbaugh owes to Michigan. It's a job. It's a job. If you're not interviewing or looking for other possibilities to expand yourself or grow or go to a potentially better situation, something that fits your life better, right? That meets some of your goals and things like that, then you're honestly doing yourself a little bit of a disservice, right? It's always fair to see if there are better opportunities for you out there in all things, right? That's a worthwhile question that you should be answering about your life, and that definitely goes towards your job. Seeing what options are out there is only valuable, right? It's like whenever someone submits their name to the NBA draft, right after their freshman year, like Hunter Dickinson this year, you get to learn, what are my skill sets? Where am I, when I go through this process, what are things I'm deficient in? Where do I need to grow? What can I improve upon? What parts of me are attractive and what parts of me aren't, right? All of these ways help kind of self-reflect and figure out ways that you can be better overall. And yeah, I don't know. I just don't understand why people are mad. Doesn't really make sense for people to be mad. They're like, oh, the loyalty is terrible. Like, is it a little awkward? Sure. Is it a little awkward? Sure. But it's a guy just looking at different options that he has. I don't see why that's crazy. Am I crazy? I don't know. Michigan is only option. I mean, that seems crazy, right? I'll say this. The NFL is a different beast right now in how they're hiring coaches in general. And Harbaugh just has like some navigations to go through with the San Francisco debacle and just the working with the management. I think he probably isn't the easiest guy to work with, and it may just be a different league, where they're not hiring guys like Jim Harbaugh anymore. I think that's possible. So Michigan is only option. I mean, not really, right? I feel like he's picky. I feel like he's pickier, and he's not willing to give up certain things that would make him an easier hire for programs. So, I don't know. Obviously, you could go to a bunch of other college programs if you wanted to. I think you're crazy if you think he wouldn't have other college options. Okay, not sure if you have any intel at all. What kind of contract extension would you expect? So it's got to be on par with whatever guys like Ryan Day, Mel Tucker are getting. I don't know, man. You're probably looking at like I'm going to say like $8 million base, incentives to push past like $10 million plus, 6 year. That's probably what I would bet. Maybe even more years than that. Maybe an 8-year contract. That's probably what I would expect. That's what I would say. Let me go through. Unless that in new contract, I don't believe it. Oh, you don't believe him? Well, I mean, there's no way to enforce it, right? But it's such a strong statement for him to say that it's not going to be a recurring issue. Again, maybe he's saying that because he has to say that. I'm not discounting that, but it's a strong thing to say, right? And I don't think he has to say this. I don't. It's not like say this or else you're fired. You know, it's like, hearing Vikings were disappointed Harbaugh did not sign with them. Yeah, I mean, he's a good coach. He's a good coach. You look what he did at San Fran, and you have to be at least a little impressed, right? 35 Robert 16 says, I think it'll matter in recruiting. I mean, possibly, right? You signed your class right now, and that's I do think that is the biggest thing. And let's just put that impact on recruiting, right? The biggest issue is negative recruiting that 1 foot outdoor, right? That, hey, you saw this search. He's clearly looking for another opportunity. Who's to say he's not going to do that next year, right? That's the negative recruiting that you could expect here. And that's something Michigan has to navigate, right? That you give other teams ammo for that. And you do. The thing I'll say is winning beats out negative recruiting, right? Not all the time. And you still got to manage this first point, right? But if you're winning, then negative recruiting becomes a lot quieter. Right? Because then it's like, yeah, I was going out and interviewing. Guess what? We got another ring. Rings talk, right? So I agree. If this year goes poorly, that gives more negative recruiting. That gives more oomph to it. It puts more pressure on winning now. Now you got to win, right? You got no more time. You cashed in those chips. That negative recruiting is going to be out there. But what you got to tout is that Big Ten championship you just won, and you got to be showing that you can continue that winning. I think that's what it comes down to. Give me a second. I'm catching up on these. Oh, you can see me scrolling through. Okay. Tucker and Kelly contract money. Now that's crazy. That's the market right now, right? That's what Michigan State did with Mel Tucker's contract. They set the new market and new expectations for a lot of coaches. It was his only offer. Obviously, he's not leaving for another college offer. Who's to say he wouldn't, though? You're saying that's obvious, but I think people are saying, no one else would hire him. There's a lot of college programs that would hire him, right? If he really wanted to. We allowed to talk D coordinator options? It's a good question, Dylan. I haven't honestly had the time to look at that yet. Haven't had a chance to look at that yet. Harbaugh's the only coach negative recruit himself. It is funny that Harbaugh found a way to make people mad after a Big Ten championship year. Did he want Las Vegas job after not getting interviewed? Took the one he could. Again, this is all projection. Conjecture. How do you get inside the head of Harbaugh and say he wanted this job, he wanted this job? I don't know. And that's the thing. People don't know. And if you reported on this situation with 100% certainty, that's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. Because, yes, it was looking like he was going to go. I was tweeting theoretical situations about why he may want to leave, and I still believe them. But I wasn't 100% sure, right? When people start actively reporting on it, you kind of trust Like when there's a report out, Harbaugh to sign with the Minnesota Vikings, it's like, oh, that seems pretty definitive, right? And you don't expect that to come back and bite one of the big reporters out there on the beat. You don't expect that. So I don't know. It's crazy. And that's a great point, Sam Stamos right here. They've been using that for years. Harbaugh to the NFL, something Urban Meyer used. Then he bolts to the NFL in the end. That's fair. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. This isn't new, right? I think we've seen that year over year. Harbaugh's going to the NFL. Harbaugh's going to go to the NFL, right? And it never really had the legs until this year, right? Now it may have some legs, but it's you do have the advantage if you're Michigan of having those previous cycles where it wasn't really factual, right? Where it was just like, what are you doing? And Harbaugh each time came out and said no, right? That he wasn't looking into it. This year he was like, yeah, I am looking into it. So like, sure, it gives a little fodder to that, but it's different if this is like the 1 year that it was reported that he was interested in the NFL. When it happens year over year, that negative recruiting topic becomes a little old, right? And even though this year it does have legs, you got to think those coaches are like, oh, we got to do this again, like, yeah, you heard this 2 years ago. You heard this last year. You heard it this year. Guess what? He's still the coach of Michigan. So how valuable is this to us to make it a point to negative or recruit that when each time we've tried this, he's always came back, right? Yes, this year had some legs, but the outcome has been the same year over year. So in that sense, it's actually a benefit that Michigan's had experience dealing with Harbaugh to the NFL over and over again because they've handled it, right? When you've had to come across something before, you find ways to navigate around that negative recruiting. Michigan's had to do that for years. So even though it has some substance after this year, Michigan has found ways to work past it, right? And they've signed a top 10 class this year. How quickly does he need to hire a good DC? Probably before spring practice, obviously. That should be within the next 2 weeks, I would hope. Got it. You gotta. It's top priority at this point. And yeah, Robert, you are right. There's more steam to it. There's more truth to it. But again, Michigan's had the chance to debunk that year over year, and the outcome has always been he returned. Right? As an MSU fan, I'm extremely happy, and I hope Harbaugh signs a long-term contract. Cool. I always think that's such like a ridiculous thing to say, where it's like, why can't you admit that, like, I don't know. I feel like that's such like an old thing to say of like, yeah, he's back. He just won a Big Ten championship. Right? He just won a Big Ten championship. Yes, Michigan State beat them. Cool. Really? Really? You think Harbaugh leaving and Michigan's going to find a situation better? Do you? Again, it goes back. I've had so many streams about this. Is it possible that Michigan would do as well as Jim Harbaugh and possibly better? Maybe. But you can't tell me that Harbaugh isn't operating at like a, solid 8 right now in terms of where he has the program, right? You may be able to find a head coach that can take Michigan to an 8.5 or a 9, right, out of 10 scale. There's a hell of a lot more coaches that would end Michigan up at a 5, at a 6, at a 4. Tons. It's a much smaller list of guys that I would be confident would do as well as Harbaugh. And again, maybe you'll disagree, but it's whenever I see that, like, yeah, he's going back to Michigan, it's like, come on. That's why I made statements toward Manuel, did some serious soul searching, almost left. In the end, followed his heart. I don't think it's that simple, Sam Stamos. Like, I don't think this. I think if he got a job offer, he might have been gone. And I think that's fine to say. I think maybe he thought there was one more chance he could go to the NFL, and that's where he wanted to end his, that's where he wanted to go. And it's possible he approached this as, hey, I'm going to see what the NFL has to offer. If I don't like it, then I'll be comfortable finishing my career at Michigan, right? That could be a line of thought as well. I can't get in the brain of Jim Harbaugh. I can't. But those are all options that I can see. True, but all you have to say now is if someone offers him, he's gone. If you don't believe him about staying till Michigan if you don't believe him about staying till Michigan doesn't want him. I mean, again, yeah, that you have to put a lot of stock. You have to make a decision on whether you believe him here or not, right? He's been truthful overall. I haven't seen a whole lot of lies out of him. But yeah, you have to put a lot of stock into how truthful is this statement. And I don't know how you define that, right? Michigan operating in an Ivy League school puts them at a disadvantage of both kinds of athletes they can recruit. Let's be honest, most of the athletes are not there for academics. So of course not. No, you're silly if you think most of the guys there are for academics, right? It's not Stanford. Michigan isn't Stanford, obviously. Are a number of athletes there for academics? Sure. What percentage? 10% of the main revenue sports, I should say. 10% maybe. That was a big factor for them. Could be more. Maybe 20%. I think Michigan does a good job identifying athletes now who are interested in academics as a fallback. I think that's a thing. So maybe it is 25%. I'm not trying to bash them. In terms of transfers, yeah, absolutely. Michigan is at a big disadvantage in terms of who they can accept for transfers just because getting classes that are acceptable credit for Michigan is just extremely tough. I remember there was a Physics 2 class. Was it Physics 2? Yeah, that a bunch of my fellow classmates took at Michigan State. And somehow that transferred over. And they had the simplest effing time at that Michigan State Physics 2 class. And I was dying. Physics 240. What a bowl of a class. It was one of like the true weeder classes in my engineering career. And I scraped on by. Was there no offer in table in Minneapolis? What's the story there? So the main story from what I understand, and I honestly haven't been on as many of the sites reading all of this as I would have been in the past. My understanding of this was Harbaugh approached the situation as this interview was more of a formality, that there was going to be an offer. He had the backing of the GM. Did not have backing of other players in that decision. And that he didn't get the offer after the all-day interview and took that as they don't want me, right? That's the story there from my understanding. Again, that's only what I've pieced together through a few different tweets out there. Watch me pop. I got to put together a video on the next DC. I'm not going to speak about it because I haven't done enough research on it. Just going to be upfront about that. Who wants the dumbest athletes, though? Get the smartest and most athletic. Oh, 100%. And I think Michigan's done a really good job of identifying those athletes who are also smart, right? You're not going for, if you can get an athlete who's also smart, that's great, right? That should be, and I think Michigan has done a really good job of finding those athletes who are really smart because guess what? If you're really smart, you're more likely to go to a school that has that to offer as well because you want to, have a fallback if sports doesn't work out and be able to have a good degree. Do you think Michigan lost momentum in recruiting because of this? Maybe a little bit, Robert. Maybe a little bit. I think winning would cure a lot. I think if this season goes poorly, you run the risk of that, right? Like I said, you kind of cashed in chips here, where you don't leave yourself a lot of wiggle room once you start losing, right? Because then you get to start piling on. You say, oh, now is he going to look for another job and stuff like that, right? Yep, Notre Dame has high standards. Notre Dame is very similar to Michigan in that regard. But yeah, everyone is pretty much signed already. So I'm speaking, what I was saying more about losing momentum in recruiting, it's more for the future, right? I think there's more pressure on 2022 because of this fiasco. And I don't think it's a whole lot. I think once you start the season again, this may die down a little bit. But if things go poorly, you know it's going to be brought up again. And that would have more fodder in recruiting as well. That class sucks. What, this top 10 class? Yeah, the 8th ranked class in 2022. Okay. Oh, Physics 240. I thought this Sam guy was just trashing on Michigan's 2022 class. Yeah, dude, Physics 240, brutal class. And if I was in mechanical, aerospace, even like chemical engineering, I would have been a little bit more interested, I think, in Physics 240. But going into computer science, I was just like, just get me through this, man. I was just like, get me out of that. I like Physics 140. That was great. That was a fun class. 240 was just like, what am I doing here? But I felt that way most of the time at Michigan. So still scrape by, though. C's got degrees. It's not about smart athletes, dumb athletes necessarily. If your admissions to play football is to have an Ivy League, then you have a smaller base of athletes to recruit from, obviously. I think Michigan gets guys they want when it comes to recruiting, unless you're on like the low side, right? I don't think there's like a huge list of recruits that Michigan can't take because of academics. I think Michigan smartly goes for athletes that do well in the classroom. I think you got to target those guys because guess what? If you don't go for one of those guys, you run a higher risk of that guy leaving because they don't want to go to class, right? Not only can you pitch academics as a plus to your program, but you leave yourself less risk of that guy transferring out because he doesn't like the schoolwork. It's a real risk if you get a guy who isn't at that top end or isn't interested in academics altogether, right? So, Antoine, you're right. There's some aspect of you can only take certain guys, right? I don't think that number is that high. When it comes to transfers, I think it's a bigger deal, but not for initial admissions. Yeah, definitely transfers. All right, 5 more minutes, or 7 more minutes, 11:15. No, I gotta go. I gotta go to bed. I had a long day today. It's been a while since I've done one of these, man. Good to be back with the Maize and Blue review. Good to be back. Got over 1,000 subscribers here, so that's nice to have. Yeah, man, I guess, how long are people going to be mad about this? And are they really mad? Like, is this a thing to be mad about? And that's the thing where it's like, I saw so many angry people. So many angry people. And it's just crazy to me. Like, people interview. Happens all the time. People get offended. Yeah, I'm hoping to do more of these in the future. It's just about timing, man. Trying to buy a house. It's crazy. It's a crazy time for the Steven life going on. Work's been insane. My day job's been insane. It's really busy. Sometimes it happens. Life catches up to you, and then you're just kind of you know, just kind of busy. It's tough. Just now subscribed. Thank you, Sam Stamos. I appreciate all you guys coming in here, commenting, talking about this. It's fun. It's fun. House is expensive. Good luck, dude. It is. It is so demoralizing. Maybe that's why Harbaugh was looking. He's like, he saw the housing market and was like, dude, I can sell this house immediately and make a bunch of money because there's no inventory out there. I'm joking, but not really. But yeah, man, people are mad about this. I think need to take a step back a little bit. People interview. People want to see what's out there. Doesn't mean that he thinks Michigan is a terrible job. Maybe it wasn't maybe his first choice, but I guarantee Michigan's not in a bad spot because they have him. You know, I think you ultimately have to answer. It comes down to one final thing, and I'll leave on this. Your emotions should be tied to, what does this mean for the Michigan program? What does this mean for the Michigan program? It means they're going to have more stability heading into this season. It is a roster that was built better for a 2022 breakout than a 2021 breakout. With the 2021 breakout, you set yourself up really well for the 2023 and 2024 classes, because now your 2022 season will be a stacking of an already championship season in 2021. You bring more expectations, but expectations were higher for 22 than they were for 21. Stability cannot be understated, how important that is with the program, and this helps bring it. Now you got to just go out and win. More pressure to win, right? With last year, finally got the monkey off your back. You got to continue it. So expectations are raised, and they were already pretty high. So it's going to be tough. All right. I'm going to take off. I'll be back for, I'm hoping, defensive coordinator. Whether that'll be ahead of when they hire it, right? I need to double check with Josh and the team on what their thoughts are on defensive coordinator positions. I just got to work with them. I got to talk with them more, get more engaged on that. And then, maybe put together a stream on different candidates, do another notepad talking about that. Do you think we can recruit somebody else from Baltimore for defense coordinator job? I hate we may have to change scheme. We'll see, man. We'll see. I'll take note of that question, though. I just got to look into it more. All right, guys. Appreciate you stopping by. Take care. Go Blue.